They're called minifigures because they're small. This is the Lego Homemaker Maxi figure introduced in 1974, and this is the Legoland minifigure introduced in 1974. You can see that the minifigures are the same size as the minifigures that we have today, which were introduced in 1978. These minifigures are available in 4 different sizes. There are 3 sizes of legs currently available, and Toy Story used to have even longer legs. Taller than that are minifigures wearing skirts, and even taller the Friends mini dolls. But they get smaller too. We also have microfigures and nanofigures. And of course we have big figs as well. And I've already talked about the technicians. There are also brick-built figures, like these big figs, and construction, like I've already talked about, and the Miniland figures that you'll see in Legoland. So Lego figures come in all shapes and sizes, but the mini ones are the most common. Play well, my friend. I don't generally have beef with Lego themes. Most Lego themes are based on stuff from outside Lego, whether they're other IPs or just general story tropes. So if I don't mess with those outside of Lego, I'm probably not going to mess with those inside of Lego. So that eliminates the Minecraft, Angry Birds, Overwatch, the New Horizon Zone 1, shows like Friends and Seinfeld and Queer Eye. It also eliminates literary tropes that I don't tend to engage with, so Ninjago and Chima are out as well. But there is one Lego theme that I do not like. Lego Galaxy Squad had an official run of about 6 months, but because it was so unpopular, it stayed on shelves for up to 2 years. In a previous video, I talked about and showed a time-lapse of building the secondary display of the Sydney Opera House. I don't think Lego stores do secondary displays anymore, but they have the primary display, which shows the sets as they come following the instructions, and then they used to have secondary displays for community builds or cool stuff that kids made in the store or just whatever. So I built the Sydney Opera House, put it in the secondary display, and bounced. A few days later, I come back to work, and the sails are ripped open. The restaurant is destroyed. It is chaos in that display case. In order to get Galaxy Squad off the shelves, my team had decided to take all the old Galaxy Squad displays and a couple of new ones and have a full-out galactic war in the ruins of the Sydney Opera House that I had spent 3 days building. And yes, it looked very cool and it got the Galaxy Squad sets off the shelves, but I was very angry. But it all worked out in the end because we got rid of Galaxy Squad and I was able to become less attached to my Lego builds and learn how to play well. So aside from Galaxy Squad, we've been talking about how Lego minifigures use people colors when referencing real people and yellow to make generic characters. But Duplo doesn't do that. And there are 2 main reasons I think it works for Duplo, but it won't work for Lego. One of my favorite parts about playing with Lego minifigures is mixing and matching pieces to create new characters. And if all of the pieces are the same color, it makes mixing pieces a lot easier. If all the minifigures are different shades of human and you want to make someone new, not only do you have to swap the head, you also have to swap the hands. And the hands tend to wear down very quickly when you swap them. Not only that, but you also have to match the head and the hands to any skin that is printed on the body, such as necklines or short sleeves or skirts. For safety reasons, Duplo characters are not supposed to come apart, so no matter how you play with them, they will always have consistent skin color. The second reason is that Duplo is for younger builders. One of the first things that babies can recognize is the human face, but artistic and abstracted faces take a few years of development to be able to recognize. So by including more and more accurate facial features on the Duplo figures, such as prominent noses, ears, scleras, and yes, skin color, these are more easily recognizable for younger builders. And how people of different ages react to toys with faces is a very interesting subject, so while I'm making a part 2, you guys can continue to play well.
What's 7 times 7?
Stuff she knows!
This is not a lightsaber. This is a flashlight, like the kind used in Lego City. This one is from Legoland, Florida. It's a lot of fun. But onto the lightsabers. Which way is up? I crunched the numbers. Between 1999 and 2021, there have been 285 lightsabers in Lego sets using this piece. I'm only counting numbered sets. San Diego Comic-Con exclusives don't count. And I looked at the box art, the official product images, and the instructions to figure out which way is up. In 94% of the lightsabers, the blade goes here. In 2% of the lightsabers, the blade goes here. The other 4% comes in when the product image or the box art had the blade going here, but the instructions had the blade going here. To those of you who guessed that it varied by character, that would be really cool, but it's simply not the case. Luke, Palpatine, Vader, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka and Anakin have used both orientations in various sets, even when they're using the same lightsaber. And the most recent example we have of this orientation comes from a magazine promotion featuring A New Hope's Obi-Wan Kenobi minifigure in 2018. So even though one method is preferred in the instructions, you can orient the lightsaber however you want. There is no wrong way to play, and play is whatever play is to you. Play well, my friends. Shang-Chi and Luke Skywalker are the same color. Shang-Chi and Luke Skywalker are the same color? Before I get started, content warning, old-timey racism, but I think you've pointed out something very interesting, not about the toys that we play with, but about the language that we use. You see, in the West, in English, we are using color words to describe things that are not those colors. White people aren't actually white, and black people aren't actually black, but we use those colors anyway. Now, studies have shown that the language that we use to describe colors affect how we perceive those colors. My favorite example is the author Homer describing the sea as the color of wine. Our concept for the color blue today doesn't come from the sea or the sky, it comes from this rock, from Afghanistan. So until ancient Egyptians started using this as pigments and makeup, people in the West didn't have a concept of blue. They would describe the sea as red or yellow or even green. Even today, German has different names for light and dark blue, and in a laboratory, Germans are better at identifying shades of blue than people that don't have those specific words. Skin color is skin color. You can see it, you can tell what it is, but we don't right now have language to adequately describe variations in skin color without making comparisons to food. What we do have language for are racial categories, and those are entirely political and often have very little to do with the literal skin color of a person. The first European explorers to meet people from East Asia described them not only as white, but as the same white as Europeans. It wasn't until the 18th and 19th century, when East Asia became a political rival with Europe, that changed from white to yellow. And because we're using the language of race today, we assume that people who are non-white are literally a different color from white people, even if that's not the actual case. So this is where the LEGO minifigures get confusing, because in an effort to play well, they are trying to depict the character's color, not their politics. And since we are using the language of politics, that affects how we see the literal color. If you want to see this taken to the whimsical degree, look at the white minifigures in the NBA series. So if we can remove our biases and the preconceived notions that come with political language and only look at what's legitimately in front of us, then we can say, this is one of my favorite things to do as a LEGO builder. It's called a bag build, where you build the LEGO set without taking it out of the bag. It's really hard to do with sets nowadays because there are often smaller bags inside the bag that have pieces, so you don't have access to all the pieces that you need. And it's often a challenge to get the pieces to stick together without getting the bag caught in between. With these kinds of packaging, it's very difficult because you only have that tiny sliver of clear plastic in the back that you can actually see through. If you want to try bag building, I'd recommend getting started with the advent calendars, because they're smaller sets and all the pieces are in the same bag, plus the instructions are on the outside if you need them. Play well, friends. In my last video about illegal building techniques, I said that illegal building is when you put extra stress on the pieces. Illegal building techniques can bend and dent and permanently damage your LEGO bricks. At the store, most of what we built were product displays, so we were following the instructions, so by definition, we had no illegal building techniques. More on that later. But in 2006, Jamie, you might know him from LEGO Masters, made a presentation about illegal building techniques, and I'm a sucker for a good PowerPoint, so let's look at it. He points out that Technic bricks and Snot bricks are not vertically aligned, so you can technically put them together so long as you don't build on top or below them. He also factors in the Lego logo that is on top of each stud. So you can build Snot on Technic bricks that don't have the logo, but the logo makes it too tall and puts stress on the brick. He also specifies that Technic pins need to be pushed all the way through so that they snap back open and are not compressed in the build, which means you also can't put Technic pins into bricks. He also factors in the material that Lego pieces are made out of. For example, transparent pieces are made out of polycarbonate, which have higher friction, so this build is illegal. And the reason that build is illegal, even though it doesn't necessarily add stress, is because a kid can't take it apart. And he goes through other illegal practices too, like over-inserting pieces and under-inserting pieces. If you search for illegal building Jamie Berard, you can find the whole presentation online. A lot of people have been criticizing these stairs on Trafalgar Square and the pages of Hedwig's book saying that they use illegal building techniques. This is because those pieces don't snap together, they're just laying on top of each other. But that doesn't make it an illegal building technique. Illegal building techniques is when there's extra stress added to the pieces, and there's no stress here. These are loose pieces. So if Trafalgar Square is illegal, then also the bonsai tree is illegal because it's just loose brick. I'd note this is probably the best Lego instructions page I've ever seen in my life. But one of the caveats of illegal building techniques is, can a 7-year-old take it apart? Which brings us to the UCS AT-AT. In step 131, we see a Technic axle being inserted completely into other elements so that you can't get it out. Now, there is a tiny slot on that green piece, so you can stick a knife in there and slowly push the Technic axle back out, but that's going to do a lot of damage to that axle. But maybe the AT-AT gets a pass because Jamie specified 7-year-olds and it's an 18+ set. And every time somebody talks about illegal building techniques, you need to specify you will not go to jail for using these. Illegal building techniques are illegal because they compromise the integrity of your Lego pieces and can damage them permanently. So if you want to keep your pieces usable and reusable for a long time, I would recommend not using illegal building techniques. But if you're here for a good time, not a long time, build however you'd like, as long as you play well. So for clarification, Lego now has a no modern military policy, but you'll notice a few exceptions. Lego City had a short-lived Coast Guard series, because in most countries the Coast Guard is not part of the military, and you'll notice that there's still military stuff in some of their licensed sets. But these weapons are included because they're not real. Well, they are real. Let me explain. The historical Lego sets that we got in the 90s and the early 2000s aren't based on actual history, they're based on literature. And this was serialized literature in books, magazines, radio, TV shows, and movies that were popular throughout the 20th century. These stories focused on high adventure, tales of heroic knights, adventures on the high sea, taming the Wild West, expeditions into the Orient. And these are stories that children at the time would have been very familiar with, but they're all fantasy stories. Yes, they're inspired by history, but they're not based in history. So the characters aren't real people, they're most often character archetypes and tropes. And the weapons, even though they are historical weapons, are treated as fantasy weapons the same way lightsabers and blasters are today. This is why whenever you see a historical weapons expert on TikTok or YouTube, they're talking about how the weapons are inaccurately portrayed in the movies. It's because they're fantasy. But the literature has changed since then, and there is a focus on gritty realism. The weapons that we have in movies now are real weapons that cause real harm. And I think a great example of this is the Death Star from Star Wars. In 1977, we saw the destruction of Alderaan, but we didn't see the destruction of the buildings or the places or the people. I think throughout the Star Wars movies and TV shows, there's only 3 named characters from Alderaan. But now when the Death Star destroys a planet, we see the people on it. We saw the people of Jeddah die. We saw the people of Scarif die. We don't even know the people of Hosnian Prime, but we zoomed in on them to watch them die. Now, in real life and in literature, weapons have consequences that they didn't used to have. And literature is always tied to politics, so you can probably guess why in the early 2000s we switched from high adventure in far-off lands to just watching the world get destroyed over and over again. That's a really good question. Let me check. I'm gonna say no. As a general rule, master builders don't craggle things if they are behind glass and out of reach of children. So this one, I'm gonna guess, is not craggled. The easy way to tell is to look for broken bricks, because the craggle actually makes it stronger between the bricks, so what's gonna break are the bricks themselves. So this one was probably craggled in sections, and then each section was put together. You can see more broken bricks on the edge. And because you can touch this one, that's probably craggled too. And it's the same reason these bottom two rows either have larger bricks, or in this case, are empty. But it looks like my guess was wrong. Even on some of the newest sculptures, you can see the craggle on the bricks.